Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. You are now listening to this episode in 2019. It is a new year, so it is time to make it a new you. But before you do that, I wanted to talk about what not to do when creating your New Year's resolutions. And instead of creating my own episode, I figured, why don't I just share with you the episode that I recorded with the Gymwits. So if you've not subscribed to the Gymwits podcast, I'm a co-host to their podcast, and they're definitely a great group of people. They're two guys. They're really awesome. So if you don't listen to them, you definitely love it. I'm on there pretty regularly as a co-host, so it's a pretty great show. The episodes are a little bit longer, so enjoy this episode. It's not like your 10-minute or less option. It's a little bit longer, really getting you started for the new year to really take control over your health and do it in a realistic, sustainable way, which you know that I'm all about. So without further ado, here is the episode recorded with the Gymwits on what not to do when creating your New Year's resolution.
Welcome to the Gymwits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, a.k.a. Tips with Tony, your registered dietitian.
And we are the Gymwits. What? You had something to say, right?
You weren't going to start. Okay, well, the first thing that I would like to say...
Not off to a good start.
Well, maybe we'll make a New Year's resolution to start our episodes better. So the first thing I would like to mention is I'd like to congratulate our intern Crystal on getting her new internship at CUNY TV. So congrats, Crystal, on that.
Crystal!
She's That's hanging out with us here, and she's very happy. So yeah, it's awesome. Congrats. Should be some great work.
Is that what you weren't telling me? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I always like to do a reveal.
So weird. You make these reveals for a podcast where where our facial expressions and context would actually be important. And so without context, you make this reveal that then I'm surprised by and confused by because it makes no sense. Not that it makes no sense to me, but it's not it's not going to hit me. And then we've got listeners that are trying to get some fitness information, and they got to listen to you try to go for some weird reveal.
But that's what makes it interesting and funny, and that's why people love us. Should I close this window?
Yeah, Tone, why don't you close the window?
I don't want to close the window, but the sirens are going to come.
The sirens are on their way.
It's like if there was a Gymwits comic, like the villain would be sirens.
Yeah,
there'd be some manifestation of police and fire sirens. Would be our
yeah, sure. No, I know. Always happens. All right, so the first thing I wanted to discuss today before we get into our New Year's resolution is about going down the rabbit hole of YouTube or anything really online. Have you gone down any fun rabbit holes recently?
A couple. We were talking about before. So basically, someone mentioned. So I do this other podcast where we talk about pop culture stuff. This Cynic Radio podcast, and we talk about like TV and movies and stuff. And so somebody had mentioned that someone said to him, "Hey, is the Ryan George on your podcast the same guy that works for I think it's Screen Rant?" And they were like, "No." But then I was like, "Oh, another Ryan George."
Discovered there's another Ryan George.
I discovered
hanging
there's another Ryan George who has now taken over me. If you type Ryan George into Google, I used to show up first, no longer. So now is my nemesis. So
we should invite him on the podcast.
Yeah. So this other Ryan George shows up, and he actually has some hilarious things for Screen Rant called a pitch meeting. So basically, it's like he's pitching a movie to himself. Like one version of him plays like the writer, and the other version of him plays like the studio exec, and it's pretty hilarious takes, kind of like in the same vein as like Honest Trailers and CinemaSin. So that was kind of the rabbit hole I jumped over. Now it's not your typical rabbit hole because it was one kind of video source and one person.
It's a solid
but
rabbit
still
hole.
Kind of like I intended on watching two, and I probably spent about an hour and a half watching videos.
Tone, what about you?
So I don't go into a rabbit hole, but so it's, I basically, my business is an online business. So when I'm using things like social media, Instagram and Facebook, I'm replying to messages, following up with clients, like, marketing myself, putting out valuable content. So there's times though where I'll go into it without an intention, and that's never good, because then you just are scrolling and commenting, but you're not really going in with an action plan. Like, I have all these messages I need to respond to, or I was supposed to write this comment or this post on this page and, engage in this conversation because it was someone I wanted to ask to be on the podcast or something like that. So I've learned that before I pick up my phone, and it's something I'm practicing, maybe I'll make it a New Year's resolution, to think to myself, okay, what am I going into this for? Because I have a terrible habit of just like constantly just like checking Instagram without actually doing anything, and just like I find I'm like on there a lot without any purpose behind it.
Nice.
So what was yours?
I've gone down a few, and somehow they connect. So Ryan and I were recently at a place where we met this guy who.
Well, don't give away the story.
No, I'm not going to. This is just a sidebar where we met some guy that was sort of hung out with the club kids of New York, which were sort of these misfit but very artistic party people. They actually made a movie about the main guy. I think Macaulay Culkin played him. It was this guy Michael Alig. I think he's out now. He's still promoting parties. I think he just got out of prison. Who wound up killing someone. So the party eventually came to an end. So I started, because he was, I guess, the guy we met was sort of hung out in that group. I started looking at old footage of these club kids on old talk shows like Geraldo and Donahue and those shows, which got me looking at old weird episodes of that talk show and all the different fads and things that were issues of the day. Like they did an episode on moshing. You remember, Ryan, did you ever go into a mosh pit?
Yeah, a couple times.
Right. So but in the 90s, even though it goes way back, not too much further back, but it goes back into the 80s with punk rock music, right? It became very popular, and because people became aware of it, and parents became very concerned that it was dangerous, and it was. And I think there was, a couple kids unfortunately died due to various things that happened in mosh pits. So there was an episode on that, and it got me. Then I looked at older footage, and it was just like weird stuff. And then somehow I clicked on another video that had to do with catching. Oh yeah, maybe one episode was on a con artist, and then I started looking at people scamming or catching the con artist, and then it somehow devolved into me watching these videos of these sort of hacker type people that would scam internet scammers. So those people that try to scam you on getting control of your computer, he would get control of their computer. So yeah, that was the fun rabbit hole that I went down.
Yeah, it's interesting to see kind of the different like turns that it takes. Like it's like telephone, where you start and where you end. That would actually make for an interesting.
Sure, we all do it now. It's fun. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun to go down a rabbit hole every once in a while.
I know Facebook makes it easy, like when you start going to videos, because you'll look at one video and then it leads you to another video and then leads you to another video, and that can happen pretty quick. You start looking at puppies and then you're seeing like decapitations and all right, so
I should have thought about that.
So all right, so let's before we get into like the main topic, we'll talk a little bit about we got an interesting study for the week, or for a few weeks ago. I think it was a New York Times study that basically showing that, or talking about how well, the story was in New York Times. I'm not, the study was published by them, but basically that aerobic exercise may help with aging. So by basically making,
it makes you older. It helps you get older.
Yes, it does help you get older. No, it helps. It helps by making the cells basically biologically younger. So it has to do with so telomere length. Remember we talked about that a while back, and that like kind of.
I feel like we've talked about.
Yeah, we did. And so basically, like your telomere length is connected to the aging process. So the shorter they are, the faster you age. And so, telomeres are like the best analogy is like the strings at the end of a shoelace. And so again, if they're longer, that's associated with kind of, again, a biologically younger person. So in this study, there was 129 middle-aged men and women who didn't exercise. They basically tested their blood and telomere length. And then they had a few different groups. So, your control group, you had another group that did some strength training. There was a group that did a 45-minute jog. And then there was another group that did high intensity interval training. So they basically did kind of 4 rounds of 4 minutes of high intensity interval training. What they found was that basically the weight training group and the control showed little change. But the joggers and the hit people actually showed much longer telomeres and also increase in white blood cells. So kind of an interesting study in showing kind of the importance of cardiovascular activity and aging. I think sometimes it kind of goes back and forth whether like cardio is more important or strength training is more important. And I think the consensus should be that they're both important and you should be doing both. And the nice thing is that whether it's interval training or it's longer duration cardio, kind of steady state cardio, either one can work, but you really need to be doing both. You can't get away with just doing one or just doing the other. Well,
there's the moral. If you want a longer telomere, then do some more aerobic activity.
I was hoping for something better than that. Thought you were gonna rhyme something with telomere.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't thinking that.
Which I think I'm mispronouncing anyway. All right, so I'll get to the topic for today. So today's topic, because we're totally trying to cash in on the fact that it is on or around January 1st when you're listening to this, is 10 reasons why your New Year's resolution will fail. Really trying to put the scare in you. And then 10 things you can do as an alternative or 10 kind of proven strategies. And a couple of these might be a little contentious, but we'll go through. I wrote the list, so full disclosure, this was me. And so we'll kind of go through each and we'll kind of have our own little discussion. So
I like the fact that you offered solutions. Like nothing annoys me more in life than when someone poo-poos something but doesn't offer a solution. I deal with it all the time. Like, I don't like that. Well, then how should we fix it? I don't know, but I just know I don't like it. It's like a pet peeve of mine when someone says something like that. Yeah. It's like, okay, so you don't like it, right? But you gave a solution. So and I think that's very valuable.
Look, I tried my best to make the solutions connected to the problems, but not always the case. Again, it really is like 10 things that work generally, 10 things that generally don't always work.
I like it. I like the list. All right, well, let's jump in. All right. So our first, first off, just a little spiel about New Year's resolutions in general. We've done episodes on it in the past, and if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. A big point about it is that it's, even though it doesn't seem like it is sort of an arbitrary date. So just keeping that in mind. That even though it sounds like important, it's a thing, right? That it really is arbitrary, and that health, fitness, wellness are things that you should always be striving for. And actually, Tony, if you listen to the Tips with Tony podcast, she mentions that not to wait for New Year's. It's right. That's the idea behind it. It's, I think it's arbitrary. So please check out the Tips with Tony podcast as well.
Thank you for that plug, but it's true.
So what's our first one?
Well, so I was gonna say I lost my train of thought. I was gonna say. Also we were talking about this before, because I think for Justin and Tony were kind of trying to wrap their heads around why are these necessarily New Year's resolution, and really like none of these are specific to New Year's resolution. I think the fact is, like, if there's one day where most people are going to try to change, it's New Year's. So it's more about like,
or the day
what are things that don't work when you try to make a major change, and what are things that do work. And so that's really the way to look at it. So I think, again, we're as cynical as the next guy. We just try to be transparent about or not as cynical, but we try to take advantage of situations. But I'd say
Tony's not cynical at all.
We try to take advantage of situations as much as the next guy. We just try to be honest about it. So look, at the end of the day, we're slapping New Year's resolution onto it because of the time of year, because it's going to...
No, but I think it's very important.
People listen,
this is when people are going to fall into these traps. All right. So the first trap is creating extremely ambitious goals, or goals that are just way too lofty. You can see people saying, well, all right, after New Year's, I am going to cut out all carbs. I'm going to cut out all sugar and all saturated fat, right? So that seems like something very difficult. Or I am going to start going to the gym 5 days a week. So what are the pitfalls in making goals like that?
I think what makes it extreme is always compared to what the person's already doing. So like if a person barely ever exercises and like to them to go to the gym 5 days a week sounds like a lofty goal if you haven't been in the gym in 5 years. But if you're someone who's been to the gym and like, you know, you go regularly now, you want to do 5 days a week, that's not as extreme. So it's always compared to the person. Like what's extreme for you and what's extreme for me are different things.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like if I'm like, you know what, this year I'm going to work out 6 days a week, 2 hours a day. That's going to be a lot for a lot of people, but for me, that's not too far off from what I currently do. So it's more, versus if you go from not working out at all to doing that, it's a big thing. Also, you know, if you make, you know, the other part, I think that is if you set a goal of, I'm going to run a marathon in April and you can't run a mile, that might be a problem.
Right.
You know, if you say, I'm going to lose 50 pounds by, you know, July, but you've never been through that, you know, that's a problem too. So kind of, you know, both in what you're going to try to do in the moment or day to day or week to week, and also in what your aspirations are, you know, if they're too much, that becomes problematic.
So what is a nicer or a more reasonable approach?
Well, so we choose comfort, and you know, it's you know, in that with any massive change, you know, we talk about it a lot, so you know, I won't go too much into it, but any massive change requires some giving up something from your life. So the more comfortable you can make those changes, the more likely you are to succeed. So, you know, for example, if you decide, you know, you're going to start going to the gym and you don't work out, and you have two options. You can work out at the gym that's close to your house, or you could work out at the, you know, some fancy, I don't know, kickboxing. Let's say there's a Muay Thai gym. You really want to do kickboxing, but it's an hour away from home, but you're really motivated to do it. You might join and you'll sign up and you'll start doing it. But really soon the balances will tip. And as that motivation wanes, the desire to get home early is gonna be present. The desire to not travel and not spend the money on parking or whatever is gonna be present. So, you know, or, you know, if let's say you hate running, but you're like, but I'm gonna, you know, I want to start losing weight. Maybe don't run, maybe bike, or maybe find another activity. So kind of when you're making your decisions, same thing with food. If you decide that you're going to start eating better, and you love sugar, probably don't want to do the ketogenic diet. Like, you know, you want to choose things that are going to be comfortable. So as you're making your changes, make changes with that in mind, because it's more likely to stick when you don't have those forces kind of saying, you know, stop, I don't want to do this.
I think that's a really good point, because you read everywhere like growth starts outside your comfort zone, and I think that there's a line there, and I actually have another episode out about it. It's like there's the green is like you're super comfortable, the yellow is like you're somewhat uncomfortable. So like, yeah, going to the gym when you're not used to going to the gym is going to be uncomfortable, but taking a spin class when you hate spin, that's going to make you really uncomfortable. So choose something that's going to push you a little bit outside your comfort zone, because you need to create change, but it's not something that's going to, like you said, once the kind of motivation kind of wavers and you're back to like your normal, like, you know, the New Year's resolution hoorah is kind of over, it's going to be really hard to sustain that. So I think that's a really valid point. I think a lot of people are under the impression that they have to go completely outside their comfort zone in order to create change.
Yeah.
All right. So the second
So I'll give a little background on the second one, because I know we'll get a little discussion on it. So we just recorded a debate where I was kind of for negative thinking, not really, but it was a kind of positive thinking debate where we kind of discussed like positive versus like maybe, you know, not so much focus on it. And so while in the midst of this, I was kind of into like anti-mantras and stuff like that. So I'll just put that out there, that my negative or bad was like kind of just doing the kind of mantras and affirmations, kind of telling yourself, and I'm
gonna piggyback off of this to make it sound, because mantras and affirmations may be motivational. They might help some people. I think what Ryan is trying to say is doing these mantras or affirmations without backing it up with the work that goes into it. So I am going to lose weight. I am going to lose weight. I am going to lose weight. But you haven't changed your diet at all. You're not exercising. So a mantra isn't going to do anything if you don't back it up with the work.
Yeah. Fair. That's good.
Does that make
Pretty
sense?
Good, yeah.
So, and I agree. However, I do believe that someone, maybe not, maybe this isn't the way I want to go about it.
Look, let's just all agree that Ryan's wrong in this instance.
No.
Okay?
Wait, you just said I'm right.
I know, but I still think you're wrong.
Okay.
The thing that affirmations do, though, is it does make you put the focus towards your goals and what you want. So it does it does help you kind of remember kind of what you're going for. So for someone who you know what? I'm going to say this. For someone who's already motivated, it is very helpful because it keeps you in that zone. But for someone who's thinking that affirmations are going to be what motivates them to get them started, not happening.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's a great way to put it. Because I think that there are certain just like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I think it's in the same way. Like if you're someone who's already motivated and you work, like
totally,
then pushing yourself out of your comfort zone can totally help because
like
it is something
fitness,
that's
like people who really are already into fitness, they know that in order to grow muscle, you have to really push yourself that extra rep.
Yeah.
Like there are things you're gonna have to wake up and do 2-a-days possibly if like you're really trying to get to that next level.
Yeah.
But we're going back to number one. We don't want that extreme experience. We want it to be gradual change, and that's what I was referring to before. Like what's extreme for one person, like someone, Ryan, might look at the way that the amount that we exercise, like people might look at that as an extreme because it's new, but because they're not used to that. But for us, it's pretty normal. And like you said, to do 2 hours a day, that would be a challenge, but it's outside your comfort zone, but it is also possible. It's not extreme to you.
No, that's fair. And I think we're in agreement on that because like I think what the problem with that I'll have with mantras and affirmations, again, same thing as I think when we were in the positive thinking debate, which if it's not posted yet will be posted soon, which is a fun debate, is I think the main issue for me is I think when you use that as that's going to make it work, and I think that doesn't replace it. It's great there as a tool if the work is there and if you're motivated already, but I think the problem is when someone kind of uses that as, all right, I'm just going to wake up, I'm going to think about it, and that's going to make it work. And I think that's a problem. It'll keep it present, but it's not going to replace the actual work. Right. And also, so now the reverse is, I was reading a study, an interesting one I'll post on the show notes, that was kind of dealing with kind of the difference between kind of mantras and also another way of thinking, which is just an ask question. And it actually seemed that there was a benefit to actually asking yourself if you're going to work out today. So, if you say, instead of saying, I'm going to work out today, if you say, am I going to work out today? And you answer that for yourself. And something about the process of kind of asking yourself that actually seemed to correlate with the people actually going into the gym. So it was just kind of an interesting thing I read, and maybe an interesting strategy. Again, same thing as with the mantras. I just kind of found a way to shoehorn this ask question thing in because I thought it was a really interesting paper. But it still isn't going to replace it. If you ask yourself if you're going to go to the gym and you don't go to the gym, that's a problem. So you still need to actually do the work, something like that.
All right. So the next trap, which is one that we see all too often, is following a program that is so strict or so sort of almost closed off to anything else, right? So the only way I'm going to lose weight is if I do the keto diet. Right, that's the only way, or the only way to work out is to do high intensity interval training. Right. So now we know those can be effective, but there's not one way to do it. And if you get stuck in sort of this tunnel vision, that can lead to problems. What are some of the issues that happen if you really have that tunnel vision?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, Tony, do you have any thoughts on that with the tunnel vision?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my favorite quote ever is stay committed to the plan, but flexible on the approach, because part of committing to a healthy lifestyle is discovering what works and what doesn't. So you have to have an open mind and try new things and experiment, but give it time to see if it works and apply it and see if it's helpful for you. But it's never, a straight and narrow answer. That's why diets don't work, because they're made for one specific person or situation. And in life, there's just so many barriers and factors that go into play that it would be almost impossible to follow one thing and have it work completely perfect for you.
Yeah. So no, you guys both hit on what I was kind of trying to get at. It was it's you need some flexibility. There needs to be flexibility. Again, especially if you're starting from a low, kind of a low starting point. It's different again if it's, if I want to run a marathon, like I've been in fitness long enough and exercise enough and run enough that I could do it, then I need a strict program, but I have a background and kind of an understanding in it. So, you just want to be careful of thinking that this is how I have to do it. Correct. And then the reverse. So the way around that, or another way around that is, instead of really being focused on the program, kind of find social forces. So find, a system where you have other people to kind of, give you feedback, to motivate you, that make you want to show up. So whether it's a friend or
a social of it group. is we recently did sorry to cut you off, but we recently did an interview with Jen Stevens, who is really into intermittent fasting, and she has a series of Facebook groups, and it's a whole community that offers support So if there's that time where you're like, oh, I'm just feeling hungry and a little down today, right? You go on, you can talk about it, and there's people there that are that are there to help you through it.
Tony does that as well, right?
Yep.
And
Tony does it.
We'd like to do that, but it takes so much time. But yeah, no, that so that's it. It's like having social forces are a huge motivator and a huge thing to keep people in line and keep people on target. And so instead of really thinking I've got to do this program, I think I got to have a team, a group with me that will help me through it. Anything
Love
to add?
that. I'm all about accountability. So I know it doesn't, and also not just even a team, but I don't know if this is on the list, so I could be jumping. I think we mentioned it, but we didn't put it on. But like also maybe a coach, or a dietitian or a personal trainer, someone that kind of gets it.
Yeah,
that can help you kind of create your own. Like a personal trainer is great because they help you create a workout plan. They listen. Well, if it's a good one, they'll listen to you. They'll figure out like what works for you, what works with your body, and give you a workout program that might be more realistic for you to stick to. Same thing with the dietitian. They're going to work with you. They're going to listen to what you're currently eating, give you modifications to that, help it align with your goals, make it a little bit more streamlined and individualized to you. So that way, because in the group setting, for example, in my Facebook group, everyone's on their own personal journey, doing their own different thing. But at the end of the day, the common goal is to commit to a healthy lifestyle. So the support is there, but there also, I think, needs to be some individualization there, which is separate from that strict program. A strict program has no real individualization to it.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, and speaking of the positive social force we're just talking about, I think that'll bring us to our next trap. Are negative social forces.
Yeah.
Right. So we know what those can be. Right. If you're living with someone, or you have a circle of friends that they go and they drink all the time.
So yeah,
right. Things like that.
Negative social forces kind of
which may not be fun, and not to say that's always bad, but it might get you away from your goal.
So negative social forces kind of manifest themselves in a couple of ways. So you have let's say a spouse, or you have kids. And you're just making,
saying that
even though you should
having a spouse
preparing
and kids
good food.
are bad for that.
I'm saying that if you have a spouse or kids that eat unhealthy, then that could be tough if you're trying to modify your lifestyle. But the other side is that I know tons of people who lose weight, and then they almost have friends and family that will make them feel bad for losing weight. Oh yeah, you can afford. You look at how thin you are. You need to fatten up, or you could afford a cake or whatever it is. So not that we always talk. Cheating is fine if it's kind of planned, and it's not that you don't have it, but you shouldn't let somebody guilt you into it or make you. You should have made that decision on your own. So yeah, you just want to be aware of those forces in your life that will be negative, and kind of account for that ahead of time so that you're planned and you know what to say, or you know how to you have strategies to get out of the situation. Everybody deals with their families and friends differently. So if you're trying to get me to, I could probably tell you to screw off. But for some other people, I might have to delicately say something, or say, oh, you know what, I just ate earlier, I'm a little full, or whatever it is. Like, you have those different relationships, but you don't want to be kind of caught off guard. You kind of have to be ready. Or you could use this is such an awful example. Is this an example of a negative social? No, it wasn't. The example of the friend that so he would his wife was eating a lot, and she had put on a lot of weight, and he wanted to help her lose weight. So what he would do is he would eat his dinner before going home, and then he would eat a healthy meal at home to try to guilt her into eating healthy. It didn't work. And I don't know how this is connected to it. I just thought that's a really funny story. I think you know the friend. It's awful, but it's kind of a funny story.
Oh, gosh. Well, I will say that people don't anticipate that with change, people don't like change. So we already don't like change. That's why it's so difficult to form new habits. But as you change, the people around you treat you differently, and that's definitely something that isn't spoken about enough. And it becomes challenging, and that's why sticking to goals become challenging, because you yourself are already questioning, who's this new me, what's going to happen, and now people around you are pointing it out. And those, like you were saying earlier, Justin, like that group of friends that you used to go out with and drink with and hang out with all the time, if you're trying to lose weight, you might be seeing them less often, not intentionally, but just because you're recognizing that your values now are getting up early in the morning to get to the gym rather than staying out late and drinking. And so through that experience, like, they might take it a certain way. They might think you don't like them, or that you're trying not to be friends with them, but no, it's just that your values changed, and they may not understand that. And part of them not understanding that might be because they themselves are maybe struggling, or that's a real
I'm sure.
whole other topic. Like we could really go
definitely
down
talk
that.
about it.
Yeah.
And I think that in a lot of social settings, I don't know if it's more with girls than with guys, but there might be some jealousy too.
Mm-hmm.
So if they see someone getting into really good shape, if you're a friend, you should be happy for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think at least, right? You should want your friend to be healthier, but I'm sure that some people will get jealous, like saying, "Oh, this person's getting into good shape. This person's building muscle or losing fat, right?" And there might be some jealousy. So there could be an underlying, sort of an underlying tone of, "Oh, let's go, come out drinking, right?" Or just something to like bring the other person down to earth.
To kind of sabotage them a little. Like honestly, it happens, and it's what I teach my clients. It's called projection. So when someone makes a negative comment about like, or how are you not going to have that extra slice of cake, or why are you not drinking? Like it's really that their own feelings of insecurity of not being able to resist temptation, and they're just projecting it onto that other person. So it doesn't have anything to do with that person, although it might feel like it.
Sure.
It usually has everything to do with them. But yeah, that's definitely. That requires someone to help talk to, that gets you, like working with a dietitian, strategizing around it. Depending on your family, it could be really challenging to lose weight if your family doesn't understand, or your friends.
Yeah. Oh, great.
I used to be jealous of how fast Ryan would gain muscle, so I secretly sabotaged him. What I would do is I forgot what I did. I did something.
I don't think you did anything.
No, I don't
Secrets
think I
out.
did.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure I did
I don't
something
think you
at
did
some
anything.
point.
But now I'm looking at this. I don't know why I didn't connect. This is dumb. Like, why didn't I put the social negative with the social positive? That doesn't make any sense.
I thought you sort of
guess.
connected.
Well, okay, so the positive you could do, which should have been having positive social forces, is having a secondary motivator. So ask yourself why. So when you have a goal, whatever it is, like whether it's again, whatever your goal is, run a marathon, lose weight, build muscle, gain 50 pounds, fight, whatever it is, don't just don't just want the goal, because that the motivation for that goal, for that number, will wane pretty quickly, especially if it's a New Year's resolution and there's no, you really need to have some kind of real connective tissue that's connected to your life and to you and to what you want out of life. So you want to ask yourself, why do I want that goal? Why do I want to run the marathon? Or why do I want to lose, X amount of pounds? Why do I want to look good in a bathing suit? Like, have some other, again, a secondary or even tertiary motivator, because that's what you're going to fall back on when you're not motivated. If it's just the superficial goal and you lose your motivation, if you can't fall back on something, it's much, much harder to kind of get the motivation to do it. Versus, like, again, if a wedding is a good example, because the wedding, it's a date, it's there, you have a dress, you have a certain way you want to look, you have a suit, dress, whatever it is. And so if you're getting demotivated at the gym, all you have to do is think, well, why do I want to get in shape? Oh yeah, I got a wedding. And that will kind of re-motivate you. So kind of having that why, answering that why for a lot of, and for other people, it could just be completely different. It could just be, how people treat them, or how people look at them, or how they feel about themselves, or, any number of things. But really ask yourself, why. Maybe it's just walking up the stairs with groceries better, or playing with your kids, whatever it is. If you have a why, it generally is going to help a lot when you start to lose that motivation.
And well, just to add on to that, the why needs to be really big. Like, it needs to be more than just that. It needs
to be a capital Y.
It just needs to be, it needs to be bigger than that surface stuff that Ryan was just saying. It really needs to matter to you a lot, because at the end of the day, if it matters to you, you're going to find a way to make it work. If it doesn't matter to you, you're not going to. So if it's powerful enough, it's strong enough, you have to ask. I was on a podcast the other day, and Jason Phillips, it's a really good podcast. You guys should look at the All In podcast. And he said, what's the why behind the why? Like, having energy for your kids is equal to having a better relationship with your kids, which equals they're going to have a better life because of it. Like, you see, that's the why behind the why. It's so much bigger than just, having more energy to go up and down the stairs. Yeah. So I would just kind of challenge everybody out there to really dig deep, because motivation doesn't always come. Actually, it rarely ever comes. It only comes by doing, and we have to have something that's going to push us to do.
Sweet. So I'm going to reword what Ryan wrote, and it's about habits. And I think that It's thinking that you can break a habit without a ton of hard work. And it kind of goes into some of the other things. So if you're used to eating a certain way and you think that you're just going, starting on New Year's, you're just going to be able to flip the switch and eat completely differently, it's just not. How often do you see someone who's just been able to make a radical change, Tony? They're eating one way their whole life, and then New Year's, and then poof, now all of a sudden they're eating completely differently.
Well, so no, it is actually possible they do it. They just don't sustain it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Exactly.
So
Well,
it's
yes,
like eventually,
exactly.
yeah. And what people don't recognize is that, like you were saying, it takes a lot longer to form a habit. There's actually studies behind this. People think it's like 21 days to break a habit. No, it takes on average 3 months to really break a habit, and another 3 months to form one. It's actually why my program is a 6-month program.
Yeah.
Because I've read all the studies, especially when it comes to behavior change, behavior modification. It takes a minimum of 3 months, and then that last 3 months to really solidify that these changes are real changes. And it also takes a lot of awareness, mindfulness, accountability. You have to be thinking about it every single day. It's not like 6 months, but like 1 week you're thinking about it, and the next week you're not, and the next month you are, and the next month you're not. Like, it's literally like day-to-day things that you need to be doing and putting your attention forward to actually make it a change in your life.
Yeah, we've evolved. Habits are an important part of our evolution. They're things that we can do without thinking. And every choice and every decision we make, day to day takes energy. And so we form these habits very early on, as a way to kind of counter that. So again, if something is built in as a habit, it doesn't require the same kind of energy as something that's not. So It's easy to do, it's easy to fall into, and then kind of in these extreme cases, it becomes part of kind of an addiction, whether it's to sugar or to smoking or to whatever, salt, whatever it is. So I think the issue, is people underestimate how difficult it is to break those habits. And I think, we think, something like smoking that is notoriously difficult, but we don't think about the same thing when it comes to eating poorly. A lot of people do think that they can just flip a switch or to building an exercise into their life. I think people just underestimate the difficulty that's involved in that. And so, so it's really important that people understand that and enter into their program with that awareness and with that knowledge that this is not going to be easy. And again, have strategies for dealing with it when it does get hard. So when the going gets tough, that you have some kind of a strategy in place to fight it. And some of these things we talked about, whether it's accountability or a journal, or something as simple as like, you may create something that's like, all right, this is what I'm going to do whenever, I fall into that, or bribe yourself, whatever it is, like have some kind of a strategy so that when you do find that urge that you can fight it. Because again, the habits are strong and they're strong for a reason. And so, breaking it does take a lot of work. It does take a lot of time. And so, it's really important to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
2 things to that. Number one thing I always tell people, like, the older you are, the harder it is to break it, right? If you've been kind of an overeater, 35 years of your life, you can't expect to fix that in 2 weeks or a month. Right? You've been eating this way for 35 years. It's not going to take you another 35 years to break it, but it's going to take a lot of extra attention. But 6 months compared to, continuing on that path, like that's what people really need to think about. And then I was going to say something else, and now I completely lost my train of thought.
What are some approaches to do the opposite of that, is sort of in a good way, is to create good habits?
So the good thing, so the opposite is basically, it's basically the opposite of it, is to develop habit forming goals. So I'm sure, Tony, you probably have a lot more experience with this, dealing with the diet. As a trainer, like, people just have to show up, and then I make them do the thing that they don't want to do, where you're not with people 24/7. So what can people do to develop good habits? Like, what are some of the strategies?
So if it's for their nutrition, I usually tell them, it's my slogan, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. It's literally picking one thing at a time and really focusing on that. So if you're trying to drink more water, then you need to think about, okay, how am I going to drink more water and how am I going to apply this? Do I need to get a water bottle? Do I need to download an app on my phone? Do I need to set an alarm on my phone to drink? Should I drink before I eat or after I eat? Like, really think about it and practice it every single day until it becomes second nature. Like brushing your teeth. You wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth, you don't even think about it because it's something that's been ingrained in you. So if you're focused on drinking more water, you might wake up, have a glass of water, it becomes part of your routine, right? So that's kind of where I help people, is picking one thing, focusing on it. And because I work with people on a weekly basis, and they have communication with me in between, basically we're working on it now. The next week we think about, okay, is this a solidified goal? Can we move on, or do we want to keep working on this? And we kind of build off of that. And actually, the more you form healthy habits, it actually does get a lot easier. I think it's like a muscle. You just have to work it, and the more that you work it, then it won't take you. It sounds like drinking more water is such a small little thing, and it's a small thing, but that small little thing gives you the confidence to do another small thing and another small thing, and you pick up momentum, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, my whole diet's
you
literally
learn
changed.
How to create good habits.
Exactly.
And just to piggyback off of what Tony said, even though it's not necessarily health or fitness related, I deal with, as a guitar teacher, and I'm sure Ryan actually doing kickboxing, you see bad habits that have been created physically from using improper technique. Yeah. So if I'm working with a guitar student, one of the most common sort of improper techniques is in the right hand, or if you're a righty guitar player, is in the way that you strum the guitar, right? I see, or even just hold the guitar pick, right? I've seen so many weird habits because someone may not have learned the right way, and when we're trying to correct this, I'll teach exercises, but the most important thing is that they do it a little bit every day, right? So I'll get the typical student will say, well, I practiced 2 hours yesterday. And I'm like, what about the rest of the week? And they're like, oh, I didn't have a chance to practice. I'm like, well, if you were to have done 5 to 10 minutes a day, 4 times a week, you would have gotten a lot more out of it than this super long session, right, where you forgot everything and then you tried to learn it, and then we're going to go over it, and then you're going to forget it again, and then you're going to try to relearn, and you're going to go into this cycle, and you're not going to progress the way you want to progress. I don't know if you see a similar thing with the technique.
No, it's fair.
Kickboxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Actually, what I think about is how people often struggle with eating healthy on the weekends. And I'd say the reason usually being is because, number one, obviously we know during the week we have structure, but also that's 5 days a week. Usually if you're working Monday through Friday, that structure, that's routine, you have 5 days of practice. Your weekend practice comes every 5 days or so. So it's a lot harder to stick to something when you're not doing it every day. So I think, that's a really, really good point, is that sometimes things take a little bit more effort and attention if you're not doing it on a daily basis.
Cool. So number 6 is I'm going to say it because you're going to probably not butcher it, but it's better for me to explain. There's a progress bias in goal setting. So basically, what that means is, especially when you start off on a program and you're into it and you're still kind of motivated, we tend to actually overinflate the good that we're doing and underinflate the bad that we're doing. So you kind of tip the scales. So for example, if you go out and you have a really great meal, you have some, I don't know, quinoa and kale and a nice salad and you're drinking a lot of water, but then you also have a couple cookies, you will underinflate those cookies and overinflate kind of the good that you did. Or, if you had a really tough, good workout one day, but then you were really inconsistent the rest of the week, you may kind of sit and focus on that one really good workout and kind of discount how, maybe the negative impact of skipping the workout during that week. So, or maybe a better example is, let's say your plan is working out 5 days a week and you work out 4 days and you skip one day. you're going to look at the 4 days and say, okay, I did go in the 4 days, but you're going to kind of discount the fact that you did skip one day. And that one skip day early on may not mean much, but over time, if you can't fight that urge to skip the gym once, you're going to have more problems down the line when you're not motivated anymore. So you want to, be aware of that. So just be aware that, even if you're doing well, whatever your goal is, and again, we talk about not, overdoing the goals, but whatever your goal is, just be aware that you don't want to overinflate the good and underinflate the bad. Kind of keep yourself in a good spot where you're present and aware of what you're doing.
So, I think that's great advice. And I wanted to talk about, and now it just sort of came to mind, talking about the exact opposite of that, where people will inflate the bad. So perhaps you've started a new eating or exercise plan, or you're working out and you're like, all right, a month has gone by and I followed this workout to a T and I'm not any bigger. Right? So you start obsessing over that, and perhaps you go overboard and you try to do it, and you stray from the plan, or you let it or you let it impact you negatively, right? When you're doing what you should be doing. And sometimes results take time, right?
See, I was right in cutting you off because this has nothing to do.
I think it does.
No,
I think it does. I think it does.
I'm
Tony,
kind of,
it's important, but it has
You know what
nothing
I'm
to do with
saying,
what we're
right?
talking
Well, it just
about.
gave me the idea, and I didn't want to lose my train of thought.
Well, I'm not, but I kind of do see what Justin's saying, because what I was thinking was like how sometimes people, they only focus on the scale, and if the scale doesn't move, so it's kind of the reverse, right? It's like if the scale doesn't move, they think that's like you were saying, like if you're not getting bigger, there's probably other things, like you committed to a workout plan and you actually stuck with it. That's something to be proud about, right? Maybe you didn't get bigger, but maybe your energies are level, maybe your energy levels are better, maybe you're more productive in your job because you are happier. There's like so many other factors. So yeah, I'm not really sure about
I hijacked
That's fair. So now actually that's a really good one. I think I'm going to place that in 10. So we'll get back to it.
We'll get
get
back
to 10.
it. Oh yeah,
it's a good point, right? But yeah, you completely hijacked and butchered number 6. So again,
see, but you put the if you had just let me do it from the beginning, I wouldn't have done
no,
it.
you probably would have still done that. But regardless, so more like that. It's an interesting idea that we don't talk about much because I don't, never really considered it. But I think, do you have that with your clients where because I find this with personal training clients that, especially when they're kind of motivated, they will tend to look a little bit more positively on the good, and then they'll kind of be, oh yeah, I did this, that, and that. Yeah, I had a bacon cheeseburger and some cookies and fries, but I was doing everything else. And so now here's where I will connect it actually to what you guys were saying is the problem then the kind of connective tissue between this and what your hijack idea is that when the scale doesn't move, it's likely, if you think you're doing great and you're not reaching the goals that you expected. So let's say you think you're doing great, but that scale's not moving. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's the underlying cause, that you're not considering. You're thinking, okay, well, I'm eating lots of fruits and vegetables, lean meats, I'm doing this, I'm drinking a lot of water, blah, blah, blah. And so you're not considering, oh yeah, I am still having that soda, or, oh yeah, maybe the portion control is not that great, or I am having this, these things that are keeping your weight up. So that is the kind of connection to that is, if you're not getting what you want, but you think you're doing great, it might just be that there is that kind of progress bias.
Yeah, and to just go with the original idea of progress bias, you see it in all aspects of life where people want, and for what it's worth, it's not bad to focus on the positive. In fact, you should, but I think at the same time you don't want to ignore the negative, right? So it could be something career based where you're like, well, I've progressed to a level, but there's still something that might be holding you back, that, and I'm being vague, that you haven't touched on. And a lot of times you don't touch on the negative because that's the aspect that's uncomfortable for you. It's like, yeah, you're okay with eating, all right. So maybe for some people, starting to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and eating quinoa and lean meat, right? Maybe that's not that hard for them. But what's very hard for them is giving up drinking. So they'll ignore the fact that they're still drinking a lot and only focus on the fact that now they're eating healthier. They're like, well, at least I'm eating healthier. Well, I haven't stopped drinking, but I'm still eating healthier. It's like, well, guess what? If you don't stop, if you don't cut down the drinking, then you're not going to get to where you want to get. So yeah, I think the whole concept of the progress bias is is huge, and we see it all over now. So what's the positive?
Did you have something else to say, Tony?
Yeah.
No, I think we're good. I think it's going to come up as we go.
So I guess the counter to that would be finding ways to hold yourself accountable. So we talked about it a little bit with like, whether it's friends or a trainer or a dietitian, or, family, a social group, Weight Watchers, something like that. A journal, but find ways to hold yourself accountable, and it could be more internal. So maybe some people are more internally motivated that, maybe it's taking pictures every week and comparing it. Maybe it's measuring yourself. Again, it could be friends. It could be any number of things, but having some way to keep yourself accountable, that will keep you progressing towards your goals. And then if you aren't kind of progressing the right way, you always have that ability to kind of reset and figure things out. Or, on the flip side, if you're screwing up, you have that person or that method to kind of, let you know in your ear, like saying, hey, you're not doing what you said you were going to do, or you're not doing what you need to. Let's redirect and kind of get back on the right track.
Nice. All right. So the next one, I just see it so often, and people don't even realize they're doing it. And it's creating vague or simple, superficial goals that don't lead to any goal. And I'll tell a story recently that happened. I have been intermittent fasting, and I think it's worked great. Tony, what do you think? How do I look?
You look good.
See, right? Right? That's
to be fair, what's she gonna say?
No, she should be honest. She's like, well, you don't look any different.
You've lost some weight.
But I think I lost a little bit, and I feel good. I don't think it's
one to comment on weight changes. I know how you're doing it, and hopefully you're doing it in a healthy way. But I as a dietitian, I've learned at a very, very early in my career, you never comment on someone's weight because you never know their mindset behind it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that doesn't necessarily weight. I was just asking you, how do I look in general? Do I look healthy?
You look good.
Do I look healthy? All right. Good. Right. So no, but I've been doing it well. I've been still eating a lot of healthy foods, right? And I've been sticking to my plan, and it hasn't been unreasonable. So I've been doing it in a way I think that works very well.
Here's an example of progress bias for Justin. So he had his nice turkey sandwich. He had a juice along with some jalapeno chips.
But that's part of my plan. My plan is that I eat anything I want.
Oh, but you just said you're eating healthy.
I am.
So make up your mind.
No. I am eating healthy because I'm eating healthy foods, but I'm also eating whatever I want with that. But I don't. In general, I don't overdo it. So yeah, I eat a little bit of junk food, and I'm eating some sugar here and there, but I eat a lot of healthy foods as well, and I stick to my plan. And that's part of the plan, is that I could eat. My plan is that I could eat anything I want, right? And but I have been incorporating the healthy foods into it. And for what it's worth, in general, I don't eat too much bad stuff. I usually eat pretty good stuff, but I do incorporate some chips and stuff here and there. But for the most part, it's been pretty good, and I've seen good results. So I'm just going to stick with it. Okay. So, all right, to defend myself. So we're out as per my plan, right? I have usually one small meal, one big meal, right? So this day I was eating my big meal, and it was a big meal. I went out to dinner with some friends, and we ordered everything on the menu, and I knew that we couldn't get away with it. So we're going to have to mention the siren every episode. Anyhow, so we're out to dinner, and we ordered everything on the menu, and we're like eating, and it was like a big delicious meal. And the guy that was with us, he said, "Oh, take this food home with you." And I was like, nah, I'm not gonna, just based on what I'm doing, I'm not gonna have a chance to eat it. So you just take it home. You're gonna want it, when you're gonna wake up in the middle of the night, you're gonna want a snack, because that's what he does. And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm trying to be healthy, so tomorrow I can't eat this." And I'm thinking, we had, if you were to look at the food that we had that evening, mac and cheese, burgers and pasta, just so much food, high caloric, which would not be considered healthy in general. And I just thought it was very funny. It's like, so he's like, his goal is like, "Oh, I'm trying to be healthier," but completely ignoring the fact that that day he had gone out and he was eating a ton of food that was not super healthy, right? Drinking, right? And it just shows that he had this vague goal of, "I'm going to be healthier," but that's all it was. So there he doesn't stick to it because it's vague, instead of having the goal of, "Oh, I'm going to eat these foods, or I'm going to stick to this plan," right? He's like, "Oh, I'm eating healthier." Right, and so that's what can happen when you have such a vague goal of, oh, I'm going to eat healthier. Well, he wasn't, and one day he did, and one day he doesn't. So to me, that doesn't really constitute eating healthier. And I also see it all the time with working out. Oh, I'm going to try to get in shape.
Right, it's not specific enough.
So what's specific? Like, I'm going to get in shape. So either go to the gym for a week or a month, and then boom, they're done because they don't have any real goal. So that was my spiel on that.
Cool.
What was that for? Number 8?
Yeah. Or
Seven.
Anything to add for that? Tony?
No, I just think things need to be specific. Like, so there has to be a plan. It doesn't have to be a rigid plan, but there has to be some sort of plan in place that gives you some sort of direction and gives you a little bit more specific tips on what you can follow.
Yeah, and the counter to that is kind of setting up small, attainable, measurable goals. So, instead of having the vague, sometimes we have two opposite ends of the spectrum. You kind of have the vague, superficial goal, and then you have the overly ambitious goal. And I think neither one works, because the overly ambitious goal is so far in the future that it's really hard to stay motivated and to really to see that out. And at the same time, the vague goal, you don't really know what that is. So again, once you're not motivated, you lose any connection to any goals. So kind of having things that are small and attainable, though, are measurable. They're things that you can do in a month. And then once you reach that, you can set another one. And you can plot these goals out so that they lead to a larger, more ambitious goal. But having the small, measurable, attainable goals are things that there's a realistic outlook, whether it's days or weeks or months. And they could be habit-forming goals. They could be, specific weight goals. They could be performance goals. They could be, food choice goals. They could be, exercise choice, any number of things. But the key is that they're kind of, small, they're something more than you're currently doing, but something that's attainable, that's realistic, and again, that's measurable, so that you can tell yourself in a month or in 2 weeks, like, I went from A to B, and that's the key to that. So having that, I think is a good counter to having those kind of vague, simplistic goals.
And like you said, the time is important. So in 2 weeks, I would like to be doing this. In a month, I'd like to be here. Yeah.
All right. So we have 8 and 9, which are sort of similar, and it's overdoing the diet, right?
Well,
and
let's stick with 8. Let's
right,
go
right,
overdoing
right,
the diet and.
So what would be? We'll let Tony speak on this topic. What would be considered overdoing it when it comes to a new diet or new eating plan?
Well, it would just be trying to go back to that extremes. I'm not really sure how this would be much different, but maybe not taking into consideration other things that are important, like sleep and exercise and hydration, and just thinking like it's all about the diet. And although the diet is very, very, very important, like there are other aspects that need to be considered. That's why I tell everyone it's about committing to a healthy lifestyle. It's not doing a diet. It's just committing to healthier living in all ways. Even stress management could fall in there. It doesn't only have to be about diet.
So that's a great take on it. So I'll actually kind of give you my rationale. So when I did number 1, which is and these aren't in any real order, but the first one was
they're in an order. You made 1 to 10, so that means you made an order.
Fair enough. So number 1 was extreme or lofty goals, and so what I meant more by that was like the extreme goal, like of going from a couch to marathon, or like losing 50 pounds, or so more for me it was like the long term. What was the end result that I wanted? That was the idea for number 1, and then we turned it a bit to this. We kind of conflated these two, and so this one was more about having a super strict diet, going from somebody who really had no restrictions to doing a ketogenic diet, or no restrictions to having 0 bad foods or whatever it is. So that was kind of the rationale. But yeah, we kind of, which a lot of these, there's a lot of overlap, but I also liked your idea, your take on this, which is, exactly like, no one aspect of your life is going to make you a healthier person. So you kind of need balance. And if you only focus on the diet, or if you only focus on exercise, that also becomes a problem. So yeah, that was a good take on it. And it came up.
What also just popped up into my head is a lot of people who decide to go to do like a bodybuilding competition. Obviously, we know that diet's very restrictive and all that, but they don't even have the basics of nutrition under their belt, and they're not talking about like. I can't even tell you how many people, it's really unfortunate, that have basically have a history of eating disorders, and they go into these competitions, and it screws up with their head, and it just kind of feeds their issues with food more. And And basically, it's like jumping from one extreme to another extreme. So it's not even jumping from like zero to an extreme. It could be jumping from one extreme to another extreme, and that I think is dangerous too.
And to sort of tie into this, a friend that I know does exactly that. Mm-hmm. He's had I think I've even mentioned this before, that he has there's some issues that he has. He said he's had back problems. He's had issues with fatigue, issues with this, right? That I think he's got some psychological issues too. Like, these are not crazy, but I think or maybe some depression that he may not even be aware of. So he's always searching for something. So he was telling me about how he did these really long fasts, sort of out of nowhere. Then he was telling me how he was doing this diet. Then he was telling me now how he switched to this exercise plan. And it was just like every time I spoke to him, it was always something new and something extreme. And you just wonder if he was really hit it. He was trying, and I feel bad. I want him to be happy, but you're wondering if he was really hitting what was the root cause of everything, instead of trying every extreme solution under the sun to fix whatever problems he perceived existed.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually why a lot of people think like the diet's the one thing we can control in this world. And so that's usually the first thing we go to, but that might not even be what you need to be fixing.
Yeah. Cool. So now the opposite to this, or something, a change you can make. This is a simple change, especially if like you're somebody who has the idea of really affecting change in your life is unlikely right now. Maybe you have maybe you're an accountant and you're hitting tax season and it's going to be absolutely insane, and the idea of fixing your exercise or diet is just unrealistic for the next. Now I would argue that you can find time to do it, but let's just say you're in that boat. Simple 2 things you can do: get more sleep and drink more water. They're very simple changes that will pay huge dividends in your life, in energy level. Like, one of the great ways to have more energy is drink more water, especially for exercise. Like, if you're being hydrated, properly hydrated, makes such a huge difference to your output in exercise, or just day to day. And same thing with sleep. So, getting appropriate sleep and drinking, appropriate water are 2 changes you can make in your life. They're somewhat realistic and reasonable for most people. Might mean putting down the phone earlier at night. It might
actually sort of just a good goal and a good thing to do just in itself. So, put down your phone, right? Because now your phone gives you that painful, realistic, painful realism of how many hours of screen time you've spent per week. Do you get that? Do you get that message?
I would not do well with that.
Like, and when you see that you've spent, 4 hours a day or 5 hours, right? For me, actually, I was able to lower it. So that might be another one, right? Sleep and water, and maybe try to half an hour less each day of looking at the screen.
Fine. So sleep, water, less screen time.
I think that's big. I think.
Well, you really are you are supposed to limit your screen time to no more than 2 hours a day. No one does.
Yeah, that.
Look, and we don't mean if you're, clearly if you're working or something like that in front of a computer, that's what you have to do. But we're talking about, just going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Good callback.
All right. So the all right. So 9 is sort of similar, and it's you're trying to, and I'll also add on to this a little bit. You're trying to lose all your weight in the gym, or you're trying to get bigger in one crazy session, and it just doesn't happen that way.
All right. Well, so I get so basically. So 9 was saying trying to lose your weight in the gym. So while we stress not to overdo the diet, I think it's also important to understand that weight loss is largely a product of your diet
and weight gain too, for that matter.
Yeah, and weight gain. Yeah. So weight loss, weight gain is a lot of diet, and what you do in the gym will complement it and will kind of pay long-term or longer term dividends, but you're not gonna, let's say you decide you want to lose weight, and let's say you want to lose 10 pounds, and you're like, all right, I'm just gonna go in, I'm gonna run 4 days a week. I'm just going to the gym, I'm gonna do 4 days, 40 minutes running. If you don't change your diet, you're unlikely to lose that much weight, because at the end of the day, especially if like that exercise increases your appetite, at the end of the day, that extra work is easily compensated with diet. So
Like I always say, you could run really hard and
Yeah.
have one slice of pizza and poof. all
yeah,
those calories
exactly.
are gone.
So basically, that's the key is basically that, and that was what I was trying to say with that one is for some people, they kind of think that the work in the gym should equal a change in the scale. And that's not necessarily the case. So, or like you said, if you go in the gym, you start trying to lift really heavy, but you don't start compensating with increased calories and protein, you're probably not going to put on all that much muscle. So you just want to be careful of, the goal is more than just what you're doing in the gym. It does require the diet. And we go back to that same theme of, it's kind of a holistic approach. You need to do a little bit of everything. It's not just one thing.
And Ryan doesn't mean like a holistic, like
No,
HOLIStic. He means
No.
a holistic,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
WHO.
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
clever little taking the holistic approach.
Yeah, I guess
we
so.
like that. We have to use that somewhere.
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah,
Tony?
you're
The
right.
holistic approach.
Yes, I like that. I like that.
All right. So, okay, what's the counter?
Where the counter to that? Where is it? You lost me. Okay. Keeping a diary and tracking progress. So again, we overlap with other themes, but a diary is useful because it allows you to see what you're doing, what you've done. It could be just the numbers, like what you're having. You could write how you feel. I think that works for a lot of people. Is like, also, after a workout, you write what you did, but you also write how you felt after the workout. It gives you a chance to kind of look back at what you've been doing, and you can get an idea of like, I felt like this doing this exercise, or I felt great with this food, or I didn't feel good with that. It allows, again, it keeps up with the accountability. And then again, tracking your progress is going to let you know what you've been doing and what needs to change. If you're on track, great. If you're not, then what have you can go back and look and see what you're doing and then make modifications in order to affect change. I think if you don't have that hard kind of data, then it's easy to, again, going back to progress bias, it's easy to kind of remember that you did X, Y, and Z, but you'll forget the details. And, I notice this when I'll have people, even filling out like a food log or an exercise log, if they just tell you off the top of their head, there's so many things that get left out and that they forget that, you can point to, if they write it down, like, oh, well, what about this, and that? You don't remember this, and that. And so you really need to, write things down to be aware of not only your feelings, but what you're doing. And it helps you make changes in the future. And you had something to add,
Yeah.
Tony?
No, I mean, tracking your progress is what I preach all the time, every day.
You know what would be a cool
Keeping
invention?
a food diary, it's like the best thing.
Like a Black Mirror style implant that automatically tracks everything that you eat. You think
Yeah.
you could create that, Ryan? How would that work? Like, so you didn't actually have to write anything down or enter anything. Like, you just ate it in automatically.
You would have to be some kind of implant in your throat.
What about in your stomach?
That, God, I don't know. I guess some kind of an implant. It's
a good idea, right?
That
Yeah,
that,
well, if you could figure this one out, we could quit our jobs.
that checks the molecular kind of count of, or like you almost go at a molecular level, checks what's coming in.
Oh, there
And
you
then,
go.
I don't know.
What I'm
All
talking
right,
about. It's a good
we'll
idea.
figure it out, yeah.
All right. If any, if there's, I don't know I don't even know what type of scientist or app. All right, look, all right, so scientists and app creators, please contact us on this if you have any ideas. We'll even give you 10% of all the proceeds if you're able to create this.
Do all the science, do all the development,
You get
put it
10%.
together,
Right.
leave it on our doorstep. Yeah, you get 10% of everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
Look, we can. That's negotiable too. So just please, feel free to contact us.
Yeah.
All right. So, So, yep. You gonna say something else?
No, were you gonna say something?
No,
Okay.
no. Let's do number 10.
All right.
Right?
So,
That's
Yeah,
right,
number 10. Yep.
so 10 is forcing the change. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, that's all right. I thought you were gonna have your whole little thing about it.
No,
Okay,
I'm gonna let you
so I think
Anyhow, so what forcing the change is? No, I'm just kidding. Go for it.
no, I think and again, this was me shoehorning something in to fit the positive part, but I think again, it kind of overlaps a little bit with ambitious goals, but if and really the idea of just kind of the vague goals is you're when you try to shoehorn change into your life, it's really difficult. So if you want, if you kind of decide I'm going to get fit just for the sake of getting fit, and you start doing anything, whatever it is, but you're really forcing it to make it work. It's again, like we're talking about, it's unlikely to work because it's not comfortable. It's not something you're used to, and as soon as you lose your motivation, you're gonna have a hard time doing it. So it's really just about a matter of like really kind of if you're forcing yourself to do any of this, there's a problem, and you kind of have to look deeper into it and try to figure out what am I doing wrong. Like, not that exercise or healthy lifestyle, not that it needs to be enjoyable, although it should be, because if you're living a healthy lifestyle, you should feel better. It should pay huge dividends just in your life. But if you're not loving, how you're eating, or loving the exercise, that's fine. But if you really hate it, or if you have a really hard time with it, there's something wrong. So you really shouldn't be, it shouldn't feel like you're forcing yourself to do any of this, unless like you make a decision to run a marathon or you're going to do a boxing match, or something that does require, significant physical effort and does require you to a large extent to really push yourself to and sometimes beyond your limit. So unless that's what you're doing,
but then again, as you mentioned earlier, if you don't have a base from which to do that, it's going to be nearly impossible. So if you're going to try to run a marathon, right? If you're like, I'm running a marathon in three months, and you've never really run before, then it's going to be
tough. Yeah,
it's going to be super hard to do that.
So I think so. Yeah, I think it's like kind of shoehorning your goals
I like
into
how
your life.
You've never used that word, and you've used it 3 times.
More than 3 times. I've been using it more lately. I don't know why.
That's the word of the month.
Yeah. No, I've definitely been using it a lot more.
I'm gonna piggyback off of what Ryan was. I'm gonna shoehorn off of what Ryan was saying.
I was really poor use of it. Yeah, that did not work at all.
I know. So, I've basically given up trying to help people in my life either get healthier, lose weight, this or that.
I just choose to help strangers.
Right. Well, look, I'll help people that actually want to do it. But so the prime example of this is my mom. So I'll be talking to her, and she'll say, "Oh, after this holiday, I'm going to lose weight. After New Year's, I'm going to lose weight. Well, I have to go here. So after that, I have this. I have after that, And I keep saying to her, no, you won't. You will not do it after that. Don't even bother. The reason why is because if you're waiting till after this arbitrary time, such as New Year's, right? You're not going to do it because you are not ready to make the change. If you were ready, you could do things right now. That going away or having a holiday has nothing to do with it. Yeah, so what if you eat a lot on Thanksgiving? That's one day, right? What about all the other time, right? So that's what I always say, and I'm sure you see that a lot. Like, that's the classic, after this, after the holidays, after I get back from vacation, after this, right? But you just know that if you're not ready to make the change, it ain't gonna happen.
Right, but to kind of counter that, honestly, no, you may never be ready. This is kind of what I want to say about that, right? And it's what I said in my podcast about why waiting till January 1st is a terrible idea. Because if you were going to do it, you would have done it already. Okay. And then also the other part to that is the only reason why January 1st is like this magical number and you do feel motivated is because you mentally told yourself and prepared yourself that you're going to do it. So if you put that mental shift to I'm going to do it today or I'm going to do it tomorrow, you're going to do it because you told yourself you would. That's what makes it magical, not the date. And so you really have to create the change because you want to make the change, because it's really what you truly want. Going back to creating that why, that's the only way it's actually going to happen, and it's the only way it's going to stay.
So the counter you kind of said already is you need to be ready to make that change. And so what?
Well, that's an interesting concept because that's the only thing. It's like you have to be ready. Well, what I mean, if you're not ready, then
you might never be ready. Like, you have to want it. I don't even know if it's about being ready. It's about wanting to change. You have to want it. You have to really want it.
What's meant by that is more.
It's more of a philosophical idea.
It's you've got to be aware of the change, and you have to plan on a deeper level for that change and so being ready may not necessarily be, being mentally kind of, you may never be ready for it. You may never be totally on board. It may never be the easiest thing in the world for you, but you do need to kind of be aware and, be prepared for the change and know the obstacles that you personally are going to face and what you're going to do to avoid those obstacles. So if I know that going out with my friends, after work is a problem area for me, then I have to be ready for that. I have to be prepared for that. I have to know what to do to counter that or to fight that off. And I can't allow myself to make a decision or to not make a decision in the moment. So, that's kind of really what's meant by being ready is, there is the mental aspect. There is the kind of being emotional. There's emotional aspect, I should say, of being ready for it. And for a lot of us, that we may never want it, on a deep level. We may want the results. We may want the benefits of being healthier or being in shape or having a healthy lifestyle, but we may not want that. We may still want the bad stuff, but you do need to be prepared for it. You do need your life to be ready for it. And so I think that's the kind of the approach that you need to take is that you have to set things up in your life to make that work and not shoehorn, things to work, because it'll only work momentarily. And then once you face that little bit of resistance, if you don't have a plan to fight the resistance, you're gonna have a really hard time.
And of course, making yourself ready it could be a whole podcast discussion in and of itself. And perhaps there's a simple answer of if you're not ready, or if you don't want something, you can't achieve it, period. So there's certainly, could possibly, if you don't want to make yourself healthy, you never will. Right. So you could certainly say that. And there might be a lot of, as sort of simple as it sounds, there might be a lot of truth to that. Yeah. So we could certainly get into that. And can you make yourself ready? Can something happen in your life where you're like, now I'm ready? Well, I think it can. I think that certainly can. Like, you could have, people have had, heart attacks and say, well, I got to change things. Or someone has a kid and says, I got to be healthier. I got to be better for my kid. So I'm going to give up drugs or alcohol or something like that. I think things can happen to make people ready for the change. But I personally believe that you gotta really want it in order to make any real difference in your life.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have had a new segment, but I think we're going to save this for the next episode because we went way over.
I always thought we were going to make it a little mini segment.
We were, but we were going to add it to
could do
the
both.
episode.
Oh, okay.
So I was going to say,
nice.
but I think we're
Stay
gonna
tuned. Stay tuned.
Yeah, we're going to have to start that next week. So although I don't know what we're posting next week because it could be something that we already recorded. So some point in the next couple of weeks, we have a new segment we're going to start doing, which is telling some of the interesting stories we have from the gym. And actually, our first story is something that just happened a week ago. But you guys are going to...
Which now, come to think about it, if you have some interesting stories from the gym,
that's
right?
an idea.
So let us know about them. Something wacky, something crazy, something that, or even if it's something that actually made a big difference, like you were working out and you met someone and you just loved the way this person worked out, right? I know that doesn't sound crazy, but if you have something like
fell in
wacky,
love in the gym and you're getting married.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, that's a great point. So especially because we're gonna try to do this every week, and I got a solid 20 or 30 good ones.
We got enough.
But I'm gonna run out.
We got
and
enough.
So
to
once
last
I run
for a long
out,
time.
if you want to start sending your stories, that'd be great. We'll read them on the air. So if you have any weird, wacky, interesting stories from the gym, we'll do our best to read it
Or
once we're done with ours.
romantic.
Or
Ryan-
romantic.
Ryan,
Well,
definitely has
make
some
it
weird
make it
ones.
engaging. So if it's just like I met so and so, we fell in love. Not funny. But if it was like
Dismissing my idea.
No. I'm saying like if there was a funny way that it happened or something really interesting or romantic about it, like definitely. But if it's just like
for instance, like the bodybuilder Titus, who and his wife at the time, how he pursued her, and then they wound up killing someone and burning it and leaving on the road, like that, like a story like that. You guys don't know
not
about that story? It was a big deal.
Well, I guess just make it interesting. That's all I ask. So
That's
yeah, if
interesting.
it's
It was
interesting,
on-
great.
it was on
So
lots
no,
of
not that
television
like a
shows.
romance could be really fun and interesting, as long as we actually have a couple. We do have a couple of stories about romance at the gym, both hilarious.
If you want to, you could call it romance,
but make it interesting. Well, yeah,
like a special, like about The Room, which Ryan will tell you about The Room.
I'll tell you about The Room later. All right. All right. Well, stay tuned.
You know where to find us.
Email the gymwits@gmail.com if you don't want to send one of your interesting gym stories in. And that's it. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic, reminding you that truth does not sell.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian. Tips with Tony, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.
And we are the Gymwits, wishing you a Happy New Year.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you are looking to take control of your health in 2019 and you really want to get started on a realistic, sustainable plan, then you definitely want to send me a message. You can email me at tipswithtony@gmail.com. You can apply to work with me one-on-one for my 6-month to food freedom coaching program. You can find that on my website, www.tipswithtony.com/coaching, and you can fill out the questionnaire to fill out the application. You can also find it on my Instagram at tips_with_Tony. That's Tony with an I. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a healthy, happy new year, and I will talk to you next week.